Hey y'all, what's going on? In this video, we are going to talk about permablue. Now this is pretty much an acid, a compound of acids that's used to make steel darker. It's used in one main industry, obviously. Many of you may be familiar with that and have used it yourself. However, I'm going to see if permablue will darken up the area on antique keys. Now, a lot of you know I do a lot of antique key stuff. Some of those antique keys are solid brass and have this finish over it. And as I am actually cutting the key or forming the key to work in the lock, it scrapes off that finish. And it's not a big deal because it's solid brass again, and it will darken up over time. However, I always feel really bad depending on how much got scraped off during the process of making the key about it being shiny and then dark. So I've always wanted a little solution to be able to make that darker so that it just looks good when it goes out. And we're gonna see if permablue does that. Now it says permablue. That doesn't mean it's gonna turn it blue. That just means it turns it dark. It all depends on what type of metal it's being used on. While we're doing that, another common style of barrel keys and even bit keys that are used indoors are the C30M for the barrel and 23B, other little keys like that. They're made out of two different materials. The C30Ms are a cast precision, like a zinc precision metal, and then these are malleable iron. Most of the barrel and bit keys that you see out there, made by Ilco anyway, are going to be a malleable iron key. So three different materials. We're going to see what happens to these, because these are pretty commonly used. However, you know, they're shiny. A lot of people don't like shiny metal keys. Some people do, some people don't. And they just don't like them hanging out of their furniture. They think they're ugly. So we are going to see if permablue will make these keys darker, will conceal where we've cut down the keys on these brass keys. But while we're doing it, and I'm not sure why you would do this, but we are just going to, as a matter of experiment, take three different of the most common styles of house type keys or building keys. We got solid brass, we've got nickel plated, and then we have nickel silver. These are the three different materials that you're going to have a choice of for keys for the most part. Brass is obviously brass. Now all keys have tiny bit of lead in them. They have some nickel in them, and then they have brass in them. So the nickel plated is not nickel all the way through. It's plated, so it's got brass underneath. Nickel silver is actually a little bit more nickel mixed in to make the key stronger. You typically find this a lot on commercial style keys. And then of course brass is just brass. So with this permablue, which is specifically, it is, what's in here? Selenious acid and nitric acid. So it's basically, that's all it contains, selenious and nitric acid. Which of course is corrosive. You have to be careful with it, so we're going to put on some safety goggles. It does stink a little bit. I've used this before many times for specific things, but never for keys. So I always wanted to see if it'll make these keys darker, because a lot of people just don't like that shiny metal, and this key may need to be used for certain pieces of furniture. However, they just don't like it being this metal color. So let's take all this back to our, what I've called the chemical station now, and soak it. According to the directions, we have to, you have to clean the parts off. And of course, they're gonna recommend using their stuff, so you don't necessarily have to do that. But you gotta clean the parts off with a cleaner or degreaser, because as you touch it, you get oils on it, and that's gonna affect the finish. It'll leave streaks in there. So for that, we're gonna use a electronic cleaner. And then they say kind of brush it off with like steel wool or something to kind of get it a little rough finish. Then soak it for about a minute, pull it out, scrape it down again, and you can do 2, 3, 4 coats depending on how dark you want the finish. But I've never done this with keys, so let us go take it back there and see what it does to some of these keys. Okay, so the steps that we're going to go through, number one is put on our safety gear. We're going to put some glasses on so that there's no chance of it splashing in your eyes. We're going to use contact cleaner, spray each one of the items down so that it gets all the oil off. We're going to rub steel wool over most of the surface of it. Now, this is kind of the important part when you're actually using this for other items, is if you don't get all the areas, it'll leave kind of a splotchy area. So after we get them scraped down, cleaned off, we're going to soak it in the Perma Blue for, it says a minute, but we'll leave it in there for a few minutes, once on each side, because we're going to have to flip the keys over. And then we have some clean water right here that we're going to move them to. After we soak them the one time, we'll take a look at them and then probably do another soak after that. So let's get started doing that right now. Okay, we've got about a minute and a half on each side, so let's go ahead and remove them. See how they came out. We're going to do a second coat. You always need to do a second coat with this stuff. And you can do a, oh, look at that. That's weird. Always need to do a second coat. Let's move this out of the way and see how they turned out here. So on this one, we just used the tip, and if we wipe it, it wipes right off. It did get it a little bit darker there. And we do have a dark malleable iron metal. It kind of, I don't know, let's see, it's wiping off pretty easily. So we've got a nice smooth finish here, but again, it's just wiping right off. Now when you, after you do this, I always recommend using some type of coating over it afterward, because blue metal will always kind of rust up quicker. I'm not really concerned with rusting with keys, but with any other items, you would want to protect it with a coating. I never have been a fan of bluing what this is made to blue. Look at that. With the brass, it wipes right off. Very splotchy, so that's probably just because we were in a hurry and didn't get it yet, and wipes right off the nickel silver. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scrape it down again with the steel wool, and we're going to do a second coat. So let's do that. Okay, let's check these out. This was our nickel plated. Again, there's really no reason to do your keys like that. Our solid brass. After soaking it a second time, and then as you saw, rubbing it down as it was soaking, it actually came out pretty neat. And we have our nickel silver. Is this nickel silver? Yeah, that's the nickel silver one. Again, it's wiping right off. So I'm not sure. Normally in this case, we would go ahead and put it back in the solution. So let's do that while we're drying off the last one. And for 23B, or the malleable iron, however you want to pronounce it. That came out a nice dark shade as well. This one actually is kind of a bluish color. It's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting finish there. And then again on our brass, it got it dark enough. It did what I was hoping it would do. Let's move them up front in the light. Oh. Okay, let's take a look and see how they turned out. This is the originals, and we have the darkened ones. Look at that. Look at that. Let's see, nickel silver, nickel plated, and brass. I did follow up with several other little minor coats, but first, most importantly, this is what I was after. So yes, it looks pretty close to the dark finish that was there before. That looks good. I'm happy with that. So I will be using this after I get done cutting my keys. Now, of course, it's a good idea to do this after you cut the keys, because once you cut the keys, there's going to be another shiny spot. But I did notice one thing here is I didn't really focus real well on the edges of it, so that may have that needed to be touched up. Probably like maybe a little wire brush wheel would probably get that a little bit better. But as far as the overall, it is kind of a blue finish. I mean, it is called blue, so it is a little blue. Again, I don't know why you would really do this unless you're a operative where you need darkened keys, but most of the time I don't think operatives are going to be carrying their house keys with them. in a hostile environment. The nickel plated, not that great, still a little splotchy. And then the nickel silver came out really neat looking and really blue. Blue. Look at that. I really like how that nickel silver came out. I touched it up. I kept like rubbing it with a Q-tip while it was soaking, so that came out really nicely. Again, I didn't really focus on the edges too much, but it still came out pretty neat. And then again, most importantly, these were just an experiment, but this is what I was after. That looks really nice, darkened, bluey, darkened color. A lot better than that shiny. And then lastly, the malleable iron. So it's actually a little bit darker itself. It's not really blue, it's actually kind of a blackish color if you hold it in a certain light. But there we go. So that answers the question as to whether or not I'm going to use that to make the tips of the keys after I cut it dark again. Yes. Ha. So there we have it. Will PermaBlue darken keys? Yes, it will. Now there is one stronger version of that. There's like a double strength made for harder steels. I may go ahead and pick some of that up and try it with some different metals like face plates on mortar cylinders to see what happens. If you're interested in that, make sure and leave it in the comments. If you've used that PermaBlue for anything on your own, be sure and put it in the comments so everybody knows. But anyway, thanks for watching, y'all. Make sure and hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll catch you next video. Thanks for watching.